Welcome back, everyone, to the Geeks, Geezers, and Googleization Show, the home of Googleization Nation, where we talk with HR and business thought leaders about the crazy shift going on all around us and explore the disruptive convergence of technology, business, and people. Here are your hosts, Ira Wolfe and Jason Cochran.
Hey, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Geeks, Geezers, and Googleization. Thank you for being part of Googleization Nation. And I'm Ira Wolfe.
And I'm Jason Cochran. If you think this is just another podcast, think again. We're the voice of the most important conversations on the future of work that's confronting business leaders and people today. And as you know, our goal is to bring you ways to reimagine tomorrow as we explore the ever-changing convergence of business, technology, and people.
Jason, there's one question that keeps bouncing back at me whenever I'm speaking or being interviewed or just talking to people. And the question is, what on earth is Googleization? So Googleization is a term that initially emerged from the shower a couple of years ago when I was writing my 2008 book about the 4 generations in the workplace. It described the fusion of the tired, the wired, and the world of technology. But as all things tech, it too evolved and transformed into the convergence of people, business, and technology. But hold on to your headphones, Googleization Nation, because while I was gearing up for today's show, a fresh interpretation materialized straight out of my book, Recruiting in the Age of Googleization. It's the moment when reality shakes hands with science fiction. That's what we're going to be talking about today. And while we are here almost halfway through 2023, reality has become BFFs with science fiction. From ChatGPT to the expansive Metaverse, we've got a lot to explore, and buckle up because this is going to be one heck of a ride. So let's imagine for a minute generative AI. Some of you know that as ChatGPT. It's a technology that has the ability to create, innovate, and potentially outthink us all. Well, last year at this time, it was merely science fiction. And almost 8 billion people on the planet never even heard of it. But guess what? It's here, it's growing. And now we're talking about how long until 1 billion people harness its power, or how long until it becomes a cornerstone of our global economy. But we're going to be asking a lot of those questions today and for the weeks and months to come, because we're not afraid to ask those questions here. And Googleization Nation, we're just getting started because we are so fortunate to have today Doug Hohulin on the show to help us understand all this. And we're going to be paying attention to spatial computing, the metaverse, because one day in the future, the metaverse is going to be blurring the lines between the physical and virtual. It's fast approaching. And it sounds crazy, right? But we're not here just to marvel at all this technology. We're here to ask the questions, to learn and unlearn. And I don't know a better guide we have than Doug. But first, we're going to talk about the perfect labor story. This is where on each episode, we focus on a disruptive, worrisome change that we think you should know. In April and May, just a few months ago, 1.8 billion visits happened on OpenAI. There was almost 90 million visits to Google. Just 14% of our population in the US is using ChatGPT, and McKinsey just came out with this. Automated knowledge AI will generate almost up to $7 trillion. Advanced robotics using AI, 1.7 trillion to $4.5 trillion. And autonomous and semi-autonomous vehicles, 0.2 to 1.9 trillion. That's with the T, trillion dollars. That means that we're looking at somewhere between 5 and 15 trillion additional dollars coming down the pike really soon due to AI.
And Ira, what's fascinating to me too is I know we're going to talk a lot about AI today with Doug, but all of this disruption, it's not just AI. Think back just a couple of years ago when stimulus checks were going out in 2020, 11% of young Americans were putting the entire $3,200 into crypto. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin, those kind of things. And earlier this month, just out of curiosity, Yahoo Finance was taking a look at, okay, if you were one of those 11% and you put your $3,200 in stimulus in those different crypto projects and companies, here's what it would be worth today, June of 2023. So 3,200 of stimulus in Bitcoin would now be worth over $6,000. So not too bad of a return, basically doubling your investment. In Ethereum, it would be worth over $17,000 right now. So even better. And then get this, Dogecoin, the meme coin, it would be worth over $56,000 right now. And the reason I bring that up is it feels like AI is getting a lot of attention right now. But what's really fascinating to me is we've got Web3, blockchain, Metaverse, AI. They're all kind of converging and happening at the same time. And one of the questions I can't wait to ask Doug today is, how are they all going to play together? What does this all look like together? Because I think we tend to think of them competing, but what is it going to look like, for instance, like with the Apple Vision Pro, when that comes out, and it's a step in the direction of spatial computing with augmented reality. But what could it look like once it's converged with artificial intelligence applications? Might we all be looking like Tony Stark from Avengers interacting with his artificial intelligence Jarvis? So we've got a lot to unpack together today. So without further ado, let's give a warm Googleization Nation welcome to today's guest, Doug Hohulin.
Well, it's great to be on this show. Great to be on this show. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being with us. And as you heard, we've got a lot to dig into. There's so much disruption going on in the world. But before we get into those specifics, maybe let's just start here. Tell us a little bit about you and your background and how you got interested in all these topics.
Well, I'm a Purdue grad, engineering grad, and I started as an intern co-op program at Magnavox and worked on automation even then in the early 80s, mid 80s, on how to automate processes. So what took a week for a technician to do could be automated overnight with one radio channel. So I started that early. I then moved on to Motorola and did a stint with them for approximately 22 years. Got to travel around the world deploying cellular telephone systems. Then I shifted more into business development and strategy, which I just love. Got to get involved in projects like the 5G Automobile Association, looking at how to deploy automated and connected vehicles, what the technology is. How do you change an ecosystem of the old way of doing technology with the new automated vehicle technology? So that was a really fun project. I came to Nokia actually as an acquisition from Motorola. And so I was with Motorola and Nokia for 33 years. A year ago, I decided to do a different shift, evolution and adaptation, and working on immersive technology with medical institutions and educational institutions, the KU School of Nursing. And working on ways how we can take the immersive technologies like the spatial web, spatial computing, the metaverse, and how to help with education and also healthcare visualization. And then a year ago, kind of did another pivot, now focusing on AI. I'm still very pro, spatial computing. I do believe that, just like the smartphone, we got to 1 billion smartphone users in 2011. We'll get to 1 billion metaverse users in 2027, plus or minus a couple years. And but I do think we'll get to 1 billion generative AI users by next year. And so it's going to be an incredible evolution. And what the key phrase I like is adaptation. Is how are we going to adapt to all this change? And so that's what I'm trying to do as a consultant, working with a number of companies on how to evolve and use this technology to the benefit of humanity.
Well, Doug, we like that term too. Let me get out of the way. For those who are watching, you can see AQ plus, which is adaptability quotient. So how do we raise that adaptability in organizations? Or how do we create that within organizations and within people? But with all the experience that you've had and doing this for 30 plus years, and talking about automation 30 years ago and bringing up names like Magnavox. People probably don't even know what that is anymore. Similar to Motorola used to be, all over, and even Nokia. Have you ever experienced a time like this, looking back?
Well, I thought it was a crazy ride when we went, like when I started with Motorola in '89, there were 7 million cell phones on the planet. And we got to 1 billion cell phones in 2002. By the way, there in 1802, there was 1 billion humans on the planet. So I keep track of when do we reach 1 billion of anything, 1 billion cars, 1 billion smartphones. So I have this theme of in a blog I posted on when do we reach 1 billion. But it took years. I mean, it took about 20 years or so to get to, from the first cell phone call was in '83, and then 2020 was 2002 was 1 billion cell phones. But this transition where no one heard about ChatGPT, and now everyone's hearing about it. It's just a crazy, this amplification of change, and how do you adapt to that? It's just, this is moving very, very quickly.
I don't want to let this go by, and I know if we wait till the end of the show, we might forget. But where's your blog? How do we get to that?
I do it on LinkedIn. I post a lot of articles on LinkedIn. Okay.
Yeah, I'll run the banner across the screen soon. But you can definitely hook up with Doug on LinkedIn, and he's the only one. So he's the only Hohulin, right?
Exactly, only Doug Hohulin.
Which is pronounced as in no fooling, right? So,
right.
Hohulin. So you can look that up. Many of our listeners, although we're talking about, certainly a lot of people are now familiar with ChatGPT. Some may have a sense of what AI is. Can you just break it down real quickly? Because we're throwing out these terms like everybody understands what they are. So if we can spend just a short period of time here talking about what generative AI is, which is ChatGPT, what spatial computing is, and also the metaverse.
Sure. So AI is just the ability to achieve complex goals. Well, intelligence is that, and then the artificial is how to make non-biology achieving complex goals. And so generative GPT and the transformer model came out in 2017, was invented by Google. And no one really thought, this is going to be important. In fact, they open sourced it, they published it, and it's like, this is kind of interesting. And in fact, Kai-Fu Lee, who he worked at both in China and the United States, he gave a presentation, wrote a book, The AI Superpowers. And, he was talking about all the AI and the deep learning elements, but the transformer model, he didn't even mention that. And that was in 2018. So all of a sudden, it wasn't all that interesting. And then, people were starting to little by little, adding more processing power to it, more functionality, and then the user interface. That and just why Motorola is no longer around and Nokia is because Apple came along and transformed the user interface. And that's what OpenAI did as well. So anyway, GPT, a generative pre-trained transformer. Generative, it means whenever AI generates something, it's generative is one way, the easy way to think of it. So it's AI generating content. In fact, I just saw one where, more content is generated by ChatGPT than all the humanities content, written content. So that was a couple of months ago. And from artwork being generated, like with Midjourney. So it's generating. We're just using AI to do all amazing content generation, whether it's videos, audio, images, and then text as well. And then it's pre-trained. So the key question is what do you train it on? And, do I train it on everything, right? It's like a college student, do you give them give them all kinds of information, or do you target the information? Like Google, have come out with MedPalm and Security Palm, which is focused specifically on, they're going to school to become medical experts or going to school to become security experts. And they do a lot better job than if you just say, here's a whole bunch of general information. And now use that just to become an expert in medical. So anyway, there's these, what kind of data do you put it in? There's also something called reinforcement learning with human feedback, or with feedback in general, to say, okay, how do I train it and say, hey, this is a good answer or this is a bad answer? So it's like your AI going to school, right? And now you're taking tests to say, did I do a good job and did I do a bad job on the answer? And so that's the pre-training. And then the transformer is the model, which is very simple, actually. The transformer model, like I said, it came out in 2017. Attention is all that you need is the title of the paper that kick-started this. And again, it wasn't all that interesting until all of a sudden, just like Einstein, I think, he had that year, 1905, I think it was, where all of a sudden he just, when he talked about, discovered, proved the atom existed. He did special relativity. So he had just this amazing year, and 2022 was that year of this, where all of a sudden all the pieces came together, and we just made this amazing transformation of what AI could do to generate amazing things.
And with that, Doug, I mean, you brought up Einstein. At what point is AI going to eclipse the brightest of us humans? Because we hear there's many terms used around AI. There's artificial general intelligence. There's artificial superintelligence. What are the models showing us in terms of when is it going to be considered, quote unquote, superior to human intelligence? Yeah.
The interesting thing there is, I think there's like about 150 different tests that measure intelligence, right? And, is it medicine? Is it, theory of mind test? Is it, legal? All these different tests being done. And so there's still a few things that humans do better, but more and more things with more and more processing power and better training models, where you can actually, now I think where it's like 95% of the top 95% of all humanity is as smart as them. The IQ, IQ is like, I think 153 right now is with this generative AI. The one thing is, and when I give presentations and workshops on this technology, is this is like the smartest teenager, right? And they can do amazingly positive things, amazing, incredible things, but they can do amazingly stupid things. Common sense, right? So the better, the more powerful the tool, the more it can do, but it can also do harm. So, the one challenge for humanity is how do we shape this AI tool for the benefit of humanity, this alignment, right? How do we align with human goals? I think it's going to be very critical, and that's going to be our challenge, right? Is I'm not so concerned as much as the AI taking over, but humans using the AI tool to do bad things, either from malice or not knowing how to use the tools properly.
So when AI develops a prefrontal lobe for that maturity, right, we'll be in trouble. And Doug, you're obviously a lot smarter than I am, because I'm a stats guy too. I wrote a couple books, and it was my first book, Perfect Labor Storm Fact Book, was literally just 100-page of facts about what the future of work was going to look like. It was just stats collated from everybody. You created this 1 billion, stuck with one. That was a lot easier to remember than a whole variety. But what's interesting is, and you mentioned, I'm glad you brought this up, because there's a lot of press out there about, well, the ChatGPT or AI can already think 28 million times faster, or a laptop just with the processor is 28 million times faster than what our human brain can think. And we know that we can put in a calculation, and just like that, it figures it out. And then, so we're looking in a future with even quantum computing, and they're talking like 158 million times faster than the fastest supercomputer. So there's all these stats out there that we can calculate information faster. We can consume information faster. Doesn't mean it's smarter. It just means it can analyze it. And we still need the human beings to figure out if it's accurate, because I've run a couple searches and it'll come up with these, I said, include references, include sources, and it includes sources that don't exist.
Exactly.
I mean, they sound official. They give me the date, They gave me the publication, the volume, the page number. And when I say it doesn't exist. When I search for it on Google, at least it doesn't exist on Google, which means it probably doesn't exist at all. So we still have to be careful with that. But with that, what are some of the I guess there's people here, and I want to make this relevant because there's a lot of people here that just still might dismiss this, that this is all fun and games, but they're in a job, or they're in a company, or they're in an industry, or their centers of influence just say, I'm 55 years old, or 65 years old, or 40 years old. I'll never see this affect me. What's your advice to them? I mean, what are some of the, how is this going to affect us now? And what are some of the best use cases you see that you're excited about?
Well, I'm a lifelong learner, and I'm part of this organization called Bookflow, where we're a group of learners. And in fact, you talk about the future of work. And Gary Bowles actually is part of our group, and he came in and talked for 5 weeks, and he wrote the book, The Next Rules of Work. And I'm also part of this other organization called Next Collabs, and he's one of the founders of Next Collabs, saying, how do we create lifelong learners, right? And how do we understand how to use these tools properly? The good news is, if you're 55 plus, these tools can help you in tremendous ways. I walk with a friend who's a retired nurse, and the ability to help with cognitive, as you're declining cognitively, remembering things. The question is what would maximize your life today, at the end of the day? And, can AI help with some of that, right? How can it help provide better relationships, like connect with people? How do you, get more information to learn something new? Again, I think if you're not learning something new every day, you're old, right? If you're learning something new every day, you're not old, no matter if you're 99 or 9, right? So I'm a big believer in learning things new, find new challenges, no matter how hard you are, and then using AI to complement, maybe some of your weaknesses. And, how can you use AI to help you remember things, like I said, to connect with people? I believe that AI is a tool that can really help improve, amplify the human spirit of creativity. And so I'm excited about that. So if you're a creative person, I would encourage you, especially if you're older, to learn how to use these tools.
And Doug, with that, we still have some businesses and leaders, I think, that they kind of want to bury their head in the sand and just think, okay, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. We're still going to be relevant in 5 years if we just keep doing what we do. In the consulting work that you do, how do you help maybe reluctant organizations or reluctant leaders who are resistant to change or trying out new things, whether they view it as too risky or whatever? How do you help them understand that this is the new business model? Everybody is in the business of innovation, or you won't be around in a few years. I think it was Richard Foster, his prediction, his models have by 2027, around 40% of the Fortune 500 companies will no longer exist. How in your work do you help equip these reluctant organizations or leaders who approach innovation or change, artificial intelligence, with trepidation?
Yeah, well, one thing is, my dad was a history teacher, so I go back to saying, okay, how has your company evolved and adapted over the last 20 years? Because there's been major changes, right, on how the internet has changed your company, how the cellular phone has changed your company, how workflow processes, all the new technology. So now the question is, what happened in the last 20 years may be happening in the next 2 years with generative AI. So like at Nokia, when I was there, we had an XR center of excellence. So we took people from all kinds of different organizations within Nokia and said, okay, here are all the processes we have at Nokia, and what things can be leveraged with XR technology. Likewise, you have generative AI. And so okay, what processes, in human resource, in manufacturing and supply chain, every element of your company, how can generative AI help you? Now, there is a big danger. And in fact, Shelley Palmer, I think, just mentioned this in one of his newsletters, that, making sure you understand the security risk, right? So that's very important as well, that you're not using this and you're not, getting hacked or you're doing things illegally, using generative AI. But how do you put policies in place to amplify your company's ability, understand your workflows, understand what data and knowledge your company has, and how you can use these tools, just like you're using tools for the internet, and the tools of the cell phone and the smartphone, to amplify your ability. And if you think that changed your business dramatically in the last 20 years, like I said, in the next 2 years, generative AI will do the same. So if I had to give one piece of advice, is create a generative AI task force, center of excellence. There's people in your organizations probably that are like me and like you two, and that are really passionate about this. So grab them and say, hey, let's get together once a month with every other week. Let's look at their processes that we currently have in place and how will generative AI change that. And like consultants like myself, we're there to help. I just saw that Accenture announced that they have 40,000 employees, and they're going to double that to 80,000 employees to do this kind of work, to help transition very quickly to the old model, to the next models of work, the next rules of work, as Gary Bowles talks about. So, but like I said, there's people in your industry that likely that they're real excited about this technology. Find them and use them to your ability to maximize, getting your company prepared for this change that's going to happen.
Doug, there were so many good pieces of advice there. The one I just want to emphasize real quick that really struck a chord with me was reminding these leaders and organizations, you have changed. You aren't the same as you were 15, 20 years ago. But that now it's about this change, as you mentioned, it's going to happen more rapidly, more frequently in these shorter bursts. And so just being able to adapt to it over 10, 15, 20 years, that's not going to cut it anymore. We've got to up the speed at which people can adapt in the organization and make sure the processes and workflows and structure is there to support being able to make quicker change whenever it's needed, as you suggested.
Exactly. Well, like tomorrow, I'm actually doing a panel on healthcare. Microsoft, Denise Mead from Microsoft on healthcare and AI is going to be on the panel, as well as Dr. Harvey Castro. And he's a medical doctor, and he's written a number of books on healthcare and large language models. And in fact, he had a fantastic panel with the president of the American Medical Association, talking about how medicine is looking at generative AI and these workflows. And, there's 13,000 ways the body can fail. And we have about 5,000 drugs and about 4,000 medical procedures, according to Atul Gawande. And the question is can we come up with AI technology that can find these hidden pieces that we didn't know about? And if we just took this drug that's maybe on the shelf, but we didn't know it could cure this disease, it would transform medicine. So I'm excited how AI can help find ways the body can fail and then cure those ways.
It's already helped with one of the ills of medicine in helping doctors express empathy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The study that was out there is, and I can't remember the exact stat, but it was crazy. It was like that the people resonated with what the AI generated, like 70% more times, or 70 times what it came from the physician's mouth, and teaching the physicians, here's the dialogue, here's what you need to say, or figuring out ways when people need to understand why they need to do what they need to do, or they need more compassion or caring, that they go to a machine to get it, because it was much better than that. Forget curing the disease or treating the disease or doing the surgery. It was literally just that human, that interaction from there. But this is fascinating, and we've got a lot more to explore. We want to thank everybody for listening to Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization. Thank you for being part of Googlization Nation. We're talking today with Doug Hohulin. We're talking about generative AI, which many of you may know as ChatGPT, spatial consulting or spatial computing, and maybe spatial consulting, but spatial computing, and also the metaverse. And when we come back, I definitely want to talk about something that we're talking about in my certification class on understanding the brain and neuroscience at Wharton. Is that, we got so hung up on talking about remote work, how do you communicate, how we've lost connection, how we've lost serendipity, how we've lost synchronization. People aren't connected, so you have to come back to the workplace. And sitting on the horizon is spatial computing and the metaverse. So, how are we going to be able to develop those connections there? And everybody thought metaverse was dead last year, and all of a sudden, Apple releases, their new headsets, and we're back in the game. And evolving. But we're going to take a really quick break. This will probably resonate with you, Doug, because we're talking about adaptability and growth mindset. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Are your employees feeling stuck and just showing up for a paycheck? Is your workforce working harder to get back to normal than adapting to the future? It's time to help them break their addiction to certainty and develop a growth mindset. Developed by one of the world's top-rated future of work thought leaders, AQ Plus Mindset is a powerful tool to help your employees embrace change, adapt faster, and grow on the job. Conveniently delivered to any smartphone or laptop in easy-to-digest 5 to 10-minute lessons. Managers can sit back and watch employee attitude shift towards growth and innovation in just 30 days. Are you ready to help your employees thrive in this ever-changing, never-normal world? Encourage them to show more grit, resilience, adaptability, and unlock their potential? The journey to a growth-filled future starts with a growth mindset. Visit aqplusmindset.com or call 484-373-4300.
Hey, welcome back, everyone, to Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization. We're here with Doug Hohulin. We're talking about generative AI, spatial computing, metaverse. Right before we took a break, you had brought up about how we've all changed, and I am old enough to remember the phone. You probably developed some of these phones back in the days, because I had a bag phone, I had a pager. They all had Motorola, Nokia. They were all over the place, a brick phone. But prior to that, and when I was prepping for this, it brought back some old memories. Is I grew up in a small coal town in Pennsylvania, and not everybody had a phone. So I was looking that, and this came from your stat of, now how many billions of people? I think there's like 3 billion smartphones.
Over 5 billion.
5 billion smartphones on the
individuals,
planet.
actually over 6 billion total smartphones, but 5 billion people have a smartphone.
Yeah. And we didn't have those, by the way, just to go back. I mean, the iPhone came out in 2007, I think.
That's correct.
Right? So it's not even 20 years. So think about how our life changed. Now, good and bad, because we check our smartphones, 344 times a day, every 4 minutes. So it became a distraction, but then maybe it's not even a smartphone. Maybe it's not even a phone, because most people don't use it as a phone. It's a computer that could, that was much more powerful than send the man to the moon. But when you came back, I was thinking about, when I grew up, now we had our own line, but we had multiple phones, but we had one line. And there was no way I could spend 3 hours on a phone. My high school girlfriend's now my wife. And, I used to try to get on there. My parents said, they keep picking up the phone on the other end to get me off. But there were people who had party lines. They had shared lines. So there might've been 8 families within a couple blocks that shared the same number to be able to get on there. So and again, I know I'm old, but just in my lifetime of 60 years, 70 years, is all these things changed.
Absolutely.
And just the other day is like, who has a landline anymore? Well, oddly enough, is the most landlines, I think this was from either Pew or Statista, the most landlines, and it's really odd, are in the Northeast. And they went through the whole conversation of, is this because of education levels? Is this because of poverty? Is this socioeconomics? Does this have to do with race, education levels? Went through the whole thing. Do you know why the Northeast has more landlines than ever before than anywhere else in the country?
I do not actually.
Good. Verizon. Verizon, when AT&T and everybody else got out of it, Verizon basically laid the fiber. They went to FiOS,
Right.
and they bundled in the phone.
Okay.
So it's just part of it. You just get it. That's why the people have. But everywhere else in the country that didn't have the fiber or other alternatives ditched the phone. But the Northeast still hangs on to their landlines more than any place else in the country. But
yeah, I would argue though
technology.
that the one thing people don't do with their phone is make phone calls, right? They don't talk on it, right?
Yeah, especially if you have young kids.
You know, like you text. I mean, the rule now is don't call someone, text them first and say, "Can we talk?" If you want to talk to them, right?
Yeah. So we kind of glossed over the spatial computing. We keep talking about spatial computing and metaverse, and it came up in this week's in this week's module for my certification, and it was about remote work, and of how and part of it was how do we create the human connection. And it's look into the camera. We need to have eye contact. We certainly can't have social touches or handshakes. So we don't have that, and that therefore we need to figure out a way to develop that through a screen. Now I feel pretty connected to you today, but other people may struggle with that. But with spatial computing and the metaverse, and sort of give people a picture of what that is. It seems that we've got a short-term problem, but a big solution coming down the pike, that it will be irrelevant where people work, and we'll still be able to have that level of serendipity, synchrony, collaboration, creativity, those moments done through somewhat of a screen, or at least in that virtual world.
Right. Yeah, and I actually didn't define this as spatial computing. I was in the metaverse, and actually Alvin Graylin, president of HTC China, I'd recommend people connecting with him and following him on LinkedIn. Very nice person, and he's out of the U.S. and has a view on both sides, the Asian side and the U.S. side. But anyway, his comment is the metaverse is the internet that's spatialized, amplified, powered by AI, using these immersive devices, these XR devices. So that's the metaverse. And the spatial web is basically the internet 3D, spatialized. So we went from, 1D, which is text. Remember the old days where all it was is just text. And then you went into Windows and you had 2D. And now we're going to go into 3D. And so this 3D, the spatial web is 3D. In fact, Dan Mapes, who we reviewed his book, The Spatial Web, How Web 3.0 Will Connect Humans, Machines, and AI to Transform the World. Dan Mapes is the founder of Versus.io and the Spatial Web Foundation. And, I would recommend his book to talk about how the spatial web is going to just evolve, from the 2D world of the web that we know today to the spatial web. Now, Apple was real exciting because, Meta came out, Facebook Meta, in 2021, everything was hot. Everyone was running to, XR, the metaverse. And then all of a sudden everyone lost a lot of money because of, it was a little bit early for its time. But like I said, I still believe 2027, there'll be 1 billion people using immersive technology, at least an hour a day. And then 5 years later, it'll be 5 billion people using this technology. So, a good example is medical. Right now, people spend go to 1 billion office visits to their clinician a year in the United States. And, how many of them could, be done virtually? And actually, they did a study, the CDC did, and you actually have a better survival rate if you're, if you're doing telemedicine visits versus going in person. In fact, I think my saying is the least infectious visit you're going to have at your doctor's office is one you do via telemedicine. So, you don't waste the time of traveling to the doctor's visit and coming back. In fact, I did a project last year with a KU cancer doctor and a company called MetaView, where we looked at remote telemedicine project. We won $100,000 at the 10G Cable Labs Challenge because of that, on how we can have this immersive technology so that you feel like the doctor's in the same room with you, even though you don't have to travel 8 hours. Like if you're in Kansas in a rural area, you can be right there. And the other thing is the greenest mile and the safest mile you can travel is one that you do virtually. So right now we do a lot of traveling where it's maybe not that important, and if we could have a similar experience, connectivity in the spatial web, the spatial computing, the spatial web, that would save a tremendous amount of greenhouse gases. So rather than 3 grams of carbon dioxide to do a Zoom meeting for an hour, you do 100 or even 1,000 times more doing a travel by car or by plane. So the average, if you go to an event, the average event, you'll use 5 tons of CO2 gas emissions for a 3-day event if you do a business trip travel. So, now there's times where it's important to be there in person, right? I did business development and sales, so there's times you really need to meet. But if we can, cut down our business travel down by 50% and have the same experience, we save time that we're not traveling, and then we have this great experience. So I'm really excited. One solution to climate change will be, this spatial web where we don't have to do as much traveling.
That's exciting, Doug, to think about the three-dimensional aspect of this, because we've all heard about Zoom fatigue, that a lot of people have started to get burned out because now they end up having more meetings because they've got Zoom meetings back to back to back to back. It's exciting to think about maybe the opportunities that spatial computing offers to make those interactions feel more natural, like we are in person, whether it's through holograms or being immersed in that environment. That it's going to make it feel more natural, and hopefully, just like I was studying in the neuroscience class, what we're going to see is a closer replication to what parts of the brain fire up and what good neurotransmitters are released in the in-person interactions. Hopefully, we can replicate that at an even better level with the spatial computing technology. And so, I guess with that kind of goes into another segment we often like to ask our guests, which is hopes and fears. When you think about the future, you've shared a lot of hopes, and we can hear the optimism from you about a lot of the things in the future. Share with us maybe your top hope, and then maybe your top fear for the future when it comes to all of this disruptive technology that we're starting to find ourselves in.
Yeah, well, AI does a great job at doing connections, finding connections that you may not be aware of. So my hope, is that it will start finding ways, solving ways the body can fail. I have a friend that has chronic myelogenous leukemia, and this drug Gleevec came out in 2001, and it was a wonder drug. And there's other wonder drugs like that. So can we keep coming up with wonder drugs that solve the way the body can fail? So from a medicine perspective, I'm really excited about AI optimizing people's lives. Like I said earlier, can we come up with ways to say, hey, how can I do things better, save time? I mean, that's one of the things, as a consultant, I say is look for ways that AI tools can save you an hour a day. Like Microsoft, they had 5 Copilot. They already rolled that out to 20 companies, and then they went to 600 companies. And I found the site that said they're going to do it in November to everyone. So if you're using Office 365, you're going to have Copilot. That's going to come out in November. So how can you do that? So as I'm writing, as I'm doing creativity, how can I use that to help me write, to help me create, to help me visualize? These are the things that, I'm still the captain, right? I'm still in control. But I'm using the Copilot, I'm using the duet of the AI to do the heavy lifting, and I do the creativity work. So that's where I'm most excited about. And this is coming soon. I mean, Microsoft, everyone's using, Microsoft, and everyone's using Google. And those are coming out. And so there's these amazing tools that can make your life more efficient and the workflow processes. So, that's where I'm excited. Now, the flip of that is what can be the risks, right? And, people are concerned about jobs. But if you're learning, if you're a lifelong learner, and you're knowing how to use these tools, it's kind of like a farmer. My great grandfather and my grandfathers were farmers. And they were. In fact, my first job was detasseling corn in a farm field. I do not want to do that, right? And I no one wants to do that, right? I did that as a teenager. So I would say, if a job's dirty, dangerous, difficult, or dull, give that to the AI. As long as you're a lifelong learner, and they do the bad stuff and you do the fun stuff and the creative stuff. So I would ask, what things are you the most interested in, the most creative, and then how do you shape a job that can do the best? Now, again, going back to if you don't use the tool properly, you can use it for hallucination. One lawyer was a good example. Is he asked ChatGPT to cite case law, and it's kind of like asking a surgeon to use a chainsaw for his surgery, right? It's the wrong tool to use. I mean, the chainsaw does good job at cutting, but not of saving lives for surgery. So likewise, know how to use the tools properly. And so, I'm concerned about people using AI either incompetently, and not understanding how to use the tools properly. That's one concern I have. And which is why, listen to, events like today, getting consultants to help you understand the tools. And then also malice, right? Is how do, there's bad actors that use these tools for security risk, and and then people not understanding how to use the tool, they get there's fraud and abuse because they don't understand how to use those tools properly. So those are the two things I would beware of: fraud, malice, and incompetence as you're using these technology.
So, Doug, we're coming up toward the end, unfortunately. So there's a couple other things that we like to do, but one of those is always ask our guests, is there something we should have asked you that we didn't?
No, I think you did a really good job, covering the basis. I'm a real passionate about, the future of work, and I'm just, I'm glad you asked me about that, because I'm passionate about that too. Is especially for the younger generation, how we can help the younger generation. I guess the one comment I would have is, how can we help people in Africa and other places that are not as technology literate, how to help them and elevate them. I was actually a coach, a judge at a Girls in STEAM Institute event, and there were 2 teams from Kenya, Africa, high school teams. And we were talking about, immersive technology and innovation. And, one of the teams, they were coming up with reusable diapers, and the other one with reusable feminine napkins. Right. And so, we have as a coach, it's like, oh, wow. And so I actually help sponsor fund some of their projects. But, we have here in the West, we have first world problems. And so, the question is how can we help people in Africa and other places that may be disrupted the most because of factory automation. Factory automation will displace a lot of workers, and I think that's going to be a risk. So, that would be the challenge. If I say there's any challenge out there, is how do we help those who, are going to be the most challenged with this technology to elevate them, to do the best they can be.
Doug, I'm going to need you to give me an update on those reusable diapers. I have twin boys that are still in diapers. If that works, please let me know, because that would save us a lot of time and money, I think, with reusable diapers. I am a little skeptical, judging by what my boys do to the diapers that they have. But if there is some technology that can do that, I'm going to be open-minded and would love to hear about that. So please keep me updated.
I'll let you know.
Awesome. Well, Doug, the next segment we want to get to is we get ready to wrap things up. It's called our lightning round segment. I'm just going to ask you a few questions, not as professional, but more on the personal side. We want to get to know the personal side of Doug and help our listeners do the same. So let's start with this one. What's a favorite band or song or musical event of yours?
Yeah, I would say Pentatonics. I really like. They did the evolution of music, which is music from the 1500s to the present. Also, their harmonies that they bring. There's 5 performers, all a cappella, So they don't need all the technology to do amazing things with their performance. So, while you think technology is great, I would recommend listening to them.
That's awesome. I love that. And how about like a superpower? If you were to pick any type of superpower that you could have, what would it be?
I guess reading minds. Yeah, I think to be able to understand where people are coming from, and to be more empathetic to people, so I can really understand. So I think reading minds would be a good one.
You should join us in our certification course at Wharton on understanding the brain. That's
it also helps when you play poker.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. And how about this one, Doug? If there's one thing that's like at the very top of your bucket list right now, what is that one thing that you still want to do?
I'm looking for my next, I've done a lot of things, traveled around the world with work and for personal, but I'm looking to have these immersive experiences where we don't have to do as much travel, but we get the same experience. So I think we're still a few years out. It'll be interesting to see what Apple's new product comes out, and also Facebook Meta with their new product. The content that can be developed with AI is just amazing as well. And so, but can we come up with solutions where people don't have to do as much traveling, and they can have the same human connection? Those are the things I'm really excited about. And so then I can go to, I've been to the Mars, I've been to the moon in virtual reality, and it's been an okay experience. But I'm looking forward to it where it's indistinguishable from the physical experience. And I think we're definitely within 10 years, we'll be there. And so I want to help roll out that technology.
It's incredible to think about those expeditions and being able to do things that a lot of regular folks thought they'd never have the opportunity to do. Actually see what the moon is like, to experience those things, to experience what Mars is like. And even for me on a different level, I think it'd be awesome to be able to take my family with 4 young boys to an amusement park in the metaverse where you don't have to wait in line, but you still get the thrill of feeling like you're on a roller coaster. I'd be all about that.
Exactly.
So Doug, quick question on that. How quickly, I mean, I know you're talking about 1 billion people in the metaverse by 2027, maybe, give or take.
Right.
Are the headsets going to be any better? I know Apple's is so much smaller, but that seems to be part of the challenge. It's the equipment to get there.
Yeah. So Qualcomm, they announced at VR AR Association where they're working. They have like a roadmap for the next 5 to 10 years, and where you have this, basically offline processing. So basically you just have optics. So I believe that, like I said, in 5 years, 2027, we're going to have smart glasses, and that come down to, there's already devices like New Eyes is a good example. HTC Flow has another pair of glasses that are pretty good. Right now, going from a pound to like about a quarter of a pound, or 150 grams is a really critical point for life, being able to wear your glasses the whole time. So that's coming, and it will be lifelong battery, day-long battery life, so that, just like your smartphone, right? Now, the one comment I would say is there's this concept of diminished reality, right? In fact, you can Google hyper reality, and it's where you just get overloaded and bombarded, like you're at a rock concert, right? But diminished reality is like, what are 10 things you need to know right now? And how do I diminish everything else around it? So like when you're with your wife or your significant other, your kids, how do you diminish, like get rid of all the other distractions, say, hey, I'm going to get in a flow state and be focused on the things I really care about. And if all of a sudden something comes along that's really important, then it comes in. But diminish the reality, the noise around you, to focus on the important things. And I think technology can help with that if deployed properly. If not deployed properly, we're going to be bombarded with 344 times a day. We're going to be going to our smartphone when we should be focusing on things that are important. So if I have to leave it one thing, it's focus on the importance and use the technology to help you focus on the important.
Perfect, Doug. And with the glasses, you and I are trendsetters, I guess, already, Doug. A lot of people are doing everything they can to get out of wearing glasses. It sounds like you're saying here in about 4 years, everybody's going to be trying to get into wearing glasses for the experience.
Well, I think 70% of people have glasses, right? They wear glasses, and there's sunglasses as well. So people are used to wearing those already. Like with earbuds, we can, like if you look at your five senses, we can make sound indistinguishable from the physical experience, right? And so the question is, when can sight, when can smell? Actually, smell, they're coming out with that as well, that you have this, you can have all the, like 3,000 different, smells or odors. So like, can you have that? In fact, I think it would be real, you could sell that to people who have loved their dogs and figure out, what smell would their dog love the most, right? And to get them excited about that. So, sight is going to be interesting to see, but, what I understand from reading the reviews of the Pro Vision, for $3,500, they get very close to indistinguishable from the visual world. And, as that price keeps coming down, as the device keeps getting lighter and lighter, it's going to be an amazing experience. And then powered by AI, so that if I want to see the physical world and mix, it's called mixed reality or augmented reality, where I mix, information on top of the physical world. Or if I want to go virtual, like let's say I want to go to Mount Everest, right, without the risk of dying, or I want to go to the Titanic, right? You can do that virtually without having to be in a sub that will kill you. So it's, the safest place you can be is virtually, instead of a very dangerous physical world. So I'm excited about what's possible in the next 5 to 10 years.
Doug, this has been absolutely fascinating. We're going to have to get you back again so we can take a deeper dive and also see how many of these predictions are coming true, because we know they are coming down the road. Again, to connect with Doug, LinkedIn is the best way to find Doug and the work that he's doing. Doug Hohulin, the way that you spell his last name is Hohulin. Doug, any other ways aside from LinkedIn where people can keep up with you?
Yeah, that's probably the easiest way to connect. And because I post a lot of material on other ways you can get to me. Like I'm working on a number of different projects with different companies, and a lot of exciting times. And, maybe one comment is, the EU AI Act, I'm working with a company called AI Partners on, regulatory. And that's going to be, if we come back, maybe we'll talk some about that, because, how does government think about this rollout of this technology? It's going to be an interesting ride over the next few years. And, but it's an exciting ride. And I think it's one where, if you look from a future work perspective and adaptation, it's going to be, as you said, the shift, this amazing shift of where humanity was and where it's going, is going to be an exciting time. So looking forward to being part of that.
Thanks so much, Doug. Big shout out to Shelley Palmer for making our introduction. Shelley, as many people did when we locked down, we're looking for ways to continue that connection that we had from not going to places. And we did it through Zoom, so two-dimensional spatial computing. But it was we kind of kicked it off right away, and we had a couple conversations and talked about VR. But so shout out and thank you to Shelley. But thank you for being part of today's Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization. I'm sure this is going to be one of our most popular episodes, similar to the one I know you reviewed. You shared about John Asani, and that again has been one of our, in 6 years, one of our most popular episodes. Both of his, he was on twice. So we'll get you back as well, and really appreciate it. Thanks for keeping us in tune with what's going on.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. Great talking to you both.
Okay. Thanks, Doug.
Thanks, Doug. All right, we covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time there. I can't wait for folks to give it a listen and then re-listen. I know I'm going to be re-listening to this one because there were a lot of wonderfully deep snippets that Doug shared. What were some of the big takeaways for you today?
I think there were two. The one that stood out, I got to look at my note here. He talked about what can companies do, and I love the idea of like an AI task force. And again, I know things get hung up in task forces, but maybe it's a book club. Maybe companies can have a book club and just, pick out some books beyond the traditional safe HR book. Or workbooks or leadership book. What can we do? And similar to the books, the clubs that Doug has, what can you do to take out a book that may seem way out there, but the reality is it's not. So I just read a post by Chip Conley this morning, and he talked about Her. The movie Her, and a lot of people, when it came out in 2013, it was a movie with Joaquin Phoenix, were really turned off. They were really turned off with a human being falling in love with a machine, with his phone. And now we're realizing that there may be some possibilities and there's some benefits to that, and especially with so many people being lonely. So that was sort of a little bit digression there, but I think that AI task force or book club. But the other was the impact of on climate change. So we look at this from productivity standpoint and from work, but we definitely need to do that. But I think when it comes down to it, that just going away to having a concert or going away to a 3-day conference, how many tons of gases are emitted, and if spatial computing, the metaverse, AI can help mitigate that, reduce it, not eliminate it. We're not talking about all, but eliminate that. Those were two of the I guess the big topics, but there were so many.
There were so many. The one that's really stood out to me too, I was today's year old when I found out that there are approximately 13,000 ways that the human body can fail, which causes us to die. Like, I've never spent time wondering, I wonder how many different ways there are for our bodies to fail where we would pass away. But to know that there actually is a mathematical number out there that helps us understand that. And then Doug was saying, and AI is going to be able to help us understand the solution for every 13,000 of those different ways that our bodies can fail. Like, there really is this tremendous opportunity amidst all of the fear and dread that we hear of AI to really help us take that next step of advancing the quality of our lives, of helping to improve climate change, like you said, of us helping to understand how to treat and deal with certain types of diseases that cut our lives too short, where we can still have quality of life. And I'm really excited about all those things. And I appreciate Doug's perspective on that, and that he's helping other organizational leaders to adopt that same mindset of being curious, of being optimistic, of the direction that we're headed and how we can leverage these things to make the world a better place.
And for you, solving a diaper problem.
For me, solving a diaper problem. Let me tell you, that happens. Sign me up. We've got a lifetime subscription. We are definitely getting that. And with that, Googleization Nation, I want to thank you for tuning in today to today's episode. If you have not liked and subscribed on your favorite podcast platform, please do so. And also do the same on YouTube. We are growing our YouTube audience. We're also growing on Instagram. So give us a follow on there as well, because we love sharing video shorts and things to capture your attention to some of the highlights from the show. But until next time, I'm Jason Cochran signing off.
And I'm Ira Wolfe. Thanks again for listening to Geeks, Geezers, and Googleization. Thank you for being part of Googleization. As Jason said, please sign up. You can go to GoogleizationNation.com. You'll get weekly newsletters and periodic events that we're holding. And also, please subscribe and like us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever, or YouTube. We now have on my channel, we have over 10,000 subscribers. So thank you. We're up 8,000 over in the last 3 to 4 months. And we on our Geeks, Geezers, and Googleization YouTube channel, we have over 2,000. So appreciate all, everybody who's doing that. And please continue. We'll keep bringing on people like Doug. And we've got a great lineup in July. Next week is the 4th. We'll be taking that off, or the 5th. But we won't be doing a live show next week, but you can always go up and listen to some of the replays on YouTube, Apple, Spotify. So thanks again, everyone. Appreciate it. Be safe, and don't let the shift hit your plans.